It is week 2 of the Fantasy Sports Markets podcast right here on the FSM Network. What is good, people? Ben Heisler with you. Once again, my guy Derek Brown over at thequantedge.com will join us shortly. In fact, if you're watching the video version of this very podcast, you can see him. He is waving, he is dancing, he is doing things. He is decked out in black on a Friday. Is it a Black Friday? I don't know what's going on with Derek. But regardless, he is here to break down the slate. He killed it in week 1. He's going to do it again in week 2. Quick reminder that there is over $220,000 up for grabs at fantasysportsmarkets.com for week 2. There is also more than $100,000 up for grabs, probably closer to $150,000 now that I think about it, for college football week 3. I will have my article up at expandtheboxscore.com coming up a little bit later on today. By the way, speaking of the Quant Edge, make sure not only are you reading my guy Derek's work, but Elliot Chris wrote up his favorite FSM plays for week 1 last Sunday. He will have his favorite FSM plays for week 2 coming up again this week. We'll make sure that we tweet it out, and you can follow us at FSM Contest on Twitter. If you'd like to follow me, you can do so at Benny Heist. We are on Instagram as well, at Fantasy Sports Markets. And if you like the people that we bring on this podcast, please just take a quick moment or two to rate and review and subscribe. It makes a big difference. And it also helps us get better, because we want to get better, because we want more people winning, we want more people playing, so on and so forth. Derek Brown, my guy over at thequantedge.com, he is one of the sharpest minds in the fantasy industry and has become a good friend, and now joins us weekly for the Fantasy Sports Markets podcast to break down the week 2 slate. D-Bro, how you living, my friend?
Benny, it is Friday. I'm all blacked out, like you said. It's Johnny Cash. I got when the man comes around playing. It's a good day, dude. It's a good day to be alive. Let's stack some cash, buddy.
Is this where I ask you who you're going to be walking the line with come Fantasy Football Sunday?
You damn right. Yeah, you better believe it.
Just don't end up with the Folsom Prison Blues by the time Sunday evening rolls around. And that is enough for me. Let's get on to the games. Let's start with one that has just an enormous number. The Patriots are going to the Dolphins. This game opened at minus 15.5 for the Patriots on the road. It has since gone to minus 18.5, and I think that puts Miami top 3 all time as far as home underdogs go. The total has gone up in this game from 47 to 48.5. I think the big question that everyone's going to be asking themselves is not only will New England cover, and actually historically the last 3 games that have had these big home underdogs have actually been able to cover the spread. So I'm actually going to hold my nose and bet Miami at minus 18.5, maybe minus 19, depending on what the public ends up doing. But a lot of people are expecting this to be not only the debut of Antonio Brown, which we can get into, but also whether or not this is a bounce-back week for Sony Michel, because he was terrible last week. He was the lone Patriot that sucked last week at home against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So are you buying in on Sony Michel, giving himself an opportunity to have a great game script in his favor and get the Patriots back on track as far as the running game is concerned?
I think so. I think Sony gets fed in this game. I mean, you look at his 2 career games, he's had 20 or more touches in each one of those. I think that's firmly in play here. Sony's going to get run. He's got 6 red zone carries at least in both games that he's played the Dolphins. So I think he's going to get the work. I think he's going to get run. The Dolphins are trotting out. I mean, they're asking people to, come off the street and play linebacker, safety. I mean, we talk about, Fitzpatrick's probably going to get traded. Mm-hmm. It's ridiculous, man. The Patriots is a smash spot for Sony this week. As far as the other pass catchers in this, dude, it's Julian Edelman week. You got to love him in this one. And I'm curious of how much he's actually owned this week. I think he's a great spot for, especially if you're playing over on FSM. I think he goes woefully overlooked with people like, oh, Antonio's playing. Oh, well, Josh Gordon's playing. Gordon's probably, or Antonio is probably going to draw Xavier Howard. Dude, Julian Edelman is going to get Eric Rowe and Jamal Wiltz, who both of those guys are former Patriots. Wiltz in the slot is a former practice squad player for the Patriots. What else do you want? Edelman versus a horrible corner in Rowe and a slot practice squad guy? Eat it. He's going to eat up.
What about Tom Brady in tournaments? If everybody loves Michelle, if everybody's going towards Edelman, wouldn't it make more sense logically to have Brady in there as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a great spot to where you can get access if you're looking at maybe Antonio Brown catches a long one. Maybe Josh Gordon catches a long one. it's a great spot to get Brady into your lineups. He's not going to carry much ownership. And if you want exposure to those long touchdowns, Brady's a great spot to do it.
I assume there's nobody on Miami that you have any sort of interest in whatsoever. From a theoretical standpoint, they're going to have to pass all game, and you know the type of situations that Ryan Fitzpatrick has found himself in. The problem is that we don't know what the situation with Albert Wilson's going to be. Preston Wilson got put into action last week, and maybe you see a little bit of Jerry and Grant. Nobody knows what the hell's going on at running back. To me, this just feels like a stay away from Miami, even though there's going to be so much passing volume needed to be successful.
Yeah, I if anybody's watching the video, I'm just making painful faces the entire time because there's just nobody on the Dolphin side that I can talk myself into. Like, if you're just bound and determined to stick to your guns and run it back, the only person, and I can't even, really, just get conviction about it.
Sure.
The only person that I think that you could possibly talk me into and twist my arm on is Mike Gesicki, and that's about it. The corners for the Dolphins, for the Patriots, are so ridiculous good. Gesicki's going to get run. He's going to get targeted deep. That's about the only spot. And I think other people are just going to knee-jerk and be like, what, can you Drake? And I can't touch it. There's no way.
By the way, one tight end that we loved that we thought would have a decent matchup last week was Vance McDonald, and he only got about 2 catches for, 40-something yards. So, again, just if you're going to play the Dolphins, we can't help you. We're trying to help you, but we can't. Moving on, you have the Chargers going on the road to take on the Detroit Lions. The Lions found a way to Lions all over themselves last week on the road at Arizona, ended up tying against Kyler Murray, and almost won that game. Stafford threw a near pick six with about a minute left in overtime and got a very fortunate drop from the Cardinals secondary. Currently in this game, the Chargers have moved from 3-point favorites down to -1.5. The total has gone up about a half a point from 47 to 47.5. One guy that you and I are both on this week, and we were on last week as well, is Austin Eckler. And not just from the standpoint that he's the feature back now in this offense with no Melvin Gordon. We just did a video over at thequantedge.com for the Quant Edge video series presented by, Fantasy Sports Markets. That's us. But the last 3 years that tight ends have gotten hurt for the Chargers, and they have gotten hurt on a fairly consistent level, running back percentages in the passing game have gone up consistently over the last 3 years. So if you're telling me now with Hunter Henry's injury that Austin Eckler is going to get even more involved in the passing game, I don't care whether or not Detroit is trying to slow down as much as they possibly can. Austin Eckler is going to be involved in a variety of ways, and he's got a nice matchup this week.
Eckler can slow-mo catch it. He can fast catch it. It does not matter what Detroit wants to do. The matchup is not great as far as running backs for DVOA versus pass-catching running backs. The Lions are pretty good versus that, but Eckler's going to get volume, man. There's no way that he walks out of this week without around a 20 to 25% target share. Just looking at, especially, if Mike Williams is out or doubtful or limited in this game, Eckler's going to eat, Benny. It's just for days. And you're talking about the target share percentage for the running backs. Yeah, third highest in the NFL last year without, in the scenario where Hunter Henry's out. Now we see that yet again. The Chargers are going to go right back to it. They're going to say, okay, we have O-line issues. We're going to just pepper the running backs. We're going to get the ball out quick. And that's Eckler's forte. That's what he's going to do.
Last week, David Johnson against these Detroit Lions played 77 of their 89 snaps. Now, again, it was an overtime game, but still. 18 rushing attempts for 82 yards. He also had 7 targets, 6 catches for 55 yards, and a touchdown. Again, if they're going to use Eckler all over the place, yes, from a DVOA perspective, it's not a great matchup. But again, Phillip Rivers has to throw the football to somebody, and he feels extremely comfortable using Austin Eckler in the passing game, and they'll run with him as well. Anybody else from this game that particularly stands out to you? Maybe go back to the TJ Hawkinson considering that he was one of the value tight ends last week, and he'll probably be another value tight end if you're looking at him on the salary sites, but I think he's always somebody that you can consider as a contrarian play at FSM as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to knee-jerk go back to Hawkinson. He got all the air yards, and he was super involved.
Set a rookie tight end record, too.
Yeah, and I get it. I understand that. There are other tight end plays that we're going to get to that I like a lot more than TJ Hawkinson in this spot, even with Derwin James out. I understand the play, but I'm probably not going to go there this week. The other play that I like in this game is Keenan Allen. That guy is going to see a 30% target share. He is going to absolutely crush Darius Slay is nothing that you need to be worried about in this game. So we're talking about narrow concentration of targets. It's Eckler, it's Allen. I'm not really interested in a lot of sides for the Lions just because I think at the running backs it's going to get split, and the corners for the Chargers are still really good. Casey Hayward is either going to follow Jones or Galladay in this one, and I feel like you want the Chargers side and not so much the Lions.
Dallas is going to Washington. By Washington, I mean Landover, Maryland, to take on the Washington football team. Currently, the spread has gone from Cowboys -6.5 down to -5.5. But the total moving up a little bit from 44 to 46.5. I see your eyes are lighting up a little bit for those that are watching the video podcast, because this is a matchup that you are intrigued by, that you think has some sneaky shootout potential. And there are certainly plays on both sides. So let's start there. Who do you like on both sides of this game?
Last week it was Stack Your Cowboys week, and I feel like you're going back there this week. Like, people are so quick to just besmirch and not believe in Dak Prescott as a passer that I think this game kind of goes overlooked. I think people will be like, all right, it's Zeke week and he's going to get fed, and that's fine. I'm not going to dispute that because I think the Redskins' run defense is absolutely atrocious. But this Dallas passing offense is legit. In the 10 games they've had of Amari Cooper, Dak has had 32 or more passing attempts. If you look at his splits, so you go over to the Quant Edge, you look at my 10 stats article, you look at the splits for him when he's had 32 or more passing attempts, he's almost at 300 passing yards per game, Benny. And we're not talking about a small sample here. Like, out of his last 17 games, 8 of those have been in this sample of near 300 passing yards. So I think Dak is going to smash, and I think that Cooper gets moved around. It's another good game for Cooper, even if he avoids Norman, which he will. He's going to get some slot time. Gallup is going to catch a long one in this one because they can't stay with him. Whether you have Norman, whether you have other cornerbacks, I love all parts of Dallas in this one. And I feel like they're going to go overlooked. I think people are going to look at plugging in Zeke, and they're not going to touch the rest of these Cowboys pass catchers, and I feel like it's a bad move.
Okay, so if we expect Dallas to go off, a lot of times when people are looking for correlation plays, they want somebody to run it back with. Is there anybody on Washington that you feel comfortable running it back with? Darius Geis is going to miss some time, so it might be the AP show. A lot of people expect Chris Thompson to get a bunch of time, considering that he's more of the back and the style that Jay Gruden wants to play with. Remember, he made the comments earlier in the week that said that, we decided that we didn't want to have Adrian Peterson suit up because we weren't planning on running out of the I formation 55 times during a game. Well, guess what? You don't have Darius Geis anymore, so you're going to incorporate Adrian Peterson in some way, shape, or form. But do you look at Peterson? Do you look at Thompson? What about somebody like Trey McLaurin? And then, assuming Jordan Reed misses some time, maybe Vernon Davis is once again in play after he caught a long touchdown. And frankly, Case Keenum threw for almost 400 yards last week.
Yeah, Keenum, I think, is going to be active in this one. I'm not going to go that direction, but I do love his pass catchers. I'm staying away from Peterson. Look, Washington's version of Frank Gore, I don't want any part of that. I think Thompson gets a lot of run in this game because, look, if I think Cowboys are putting up some points, Thompson's going to get run. I don't want a whole lot of exposure to Thompson because the question is always, can he hit a ceiling? He's got a great floor, but even if he 3Xs, even if he 4Xs, what's that for you? I can't see Chris Thompson scoring above like around 12 to 15 points. So if you're wanting to pad your floor, that's fine. But the ceiling in this game is all McLaurin and Vernon Davis. Like I expect Jordan Reed to get ruled out of this game, and I want all the Vernon Davis and McLaurin that I can get my hands on because McLaurin is going to be targeted deep down the field. He's going to play all the snaps. The ADOT is high, sky high for him. Vernon Davis, even though he's old, he's still got legs, man. I mean, he's Washington's backup version of Delaney Walker, and I love it, man. Davis has had big games against this Cowboys team, and they're not great against tight ends. So those are the two spots that I really like for running it back for the Cowboys.
Two quick things before we move on to the next game. The first is you were talking about Vernon Davis. Man, Greg Olsen on the Thursday night game got himself so open, and that when he was running in the open field, it looked like he was just running in quicksand. Conversely, Vernon Davis, man, still looks like he's got the moves. Like, there's all these old runner tight ends.
Didn't he hurdle a dude last week? Didn't he, jump straight over a guy last week?
Yes, he did. He's still fast as hell, man. And I'm just like looking at all these other old tight ends that they look so slow when you're watching them on TV, but they continue to find ways to get themselves open. Also, I think somehow I combine Trey Quinn and Terry McLaurin. It is Terry McLaurin, not Trey McLaurin. And frankly, I'd rather just have all of Terry McLaurin and 0% of Trey Quinn. So I am sorry that I wedged the two of them together. Jacksonville. They are on the road after a tough outing at home against the Kansas City Chiefs. They, of course, get to go from Pat Mahomes to Deshaun Watson, who feasted on Monday night. Granted, it was a loss against the Saints, but he looked terrific. The line in this one is also inflated because of what people saw recently from Deshaun Watson and also what they saw from Jacksonville. It is -9.5, moved up from -8.5 for Texans. And the line, interestingly enough, has gone down about 1.5 points from 44.5 down to 43. I'm trying to figure out what to do here. Obviously, if you have Deshaun Watson in season long, you start him up and you fire him up with confidence. Same thing goes with DeAndre Hopkins. Granted, he's going to be shadowed by Jalen Ramsey, but listen, again, it's DeAndre Hopkins. You saw how lethal and impossible to guard he is. This is one of those games where I think you can make an argument that from a DFS perspective, both of these defenses are in play despite the playmakers on both sides of the ball.
No, I absolutely agree. Absolutely agree, Ben. I think that's a great call because people are like, it takes one game for people to just totally just forget about how bad Gardner Minshew looked in the preseason. He looked lost with a pop gun arm. And they see one game going against Kansas City's defense, and they're like, oh, Gardner, he's the savior. He's playing great. He can't incomplete a pass.
He does kind of look like Fat Jesus, though.
I mean, I would kind of go towards Uncle Rico, but, potato. But, look, this game, I'm not going to have a ton of exposure. Like, I understand, is Watson and Hopkins' ceiling absolutely in play? Sure, I get that. And I think it's more contrarian for tournaments and things of that nature. But in this game, the tournament play that I'm really excited about is probably Leonard Fournette. If you look at the Texans, they were not good versus the run versus the Saints. We've seen Fournette. He got 6 targets, and considering you can count how many games in his career he's gotten 6 targets on one hand. You have Minshew, like I just talked about. He's not going to push the ball down the field. That's not going to happen. Like in this last draft class, I think he was outside the top 50 in ADOT. And yes, that's part of that system in college, but part of that is the fact that if you watch the film, he can't do it. He can't throw the ball down the field.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be check down season for Fournette. And I think that he's going to get he's locked in for 20 to 25 touches in this one, and nobody's going to want to play him. So I like that. I understand the Texans side, but I'm probably going to mostly stay away from this game.
I agree with you. I love Fournette in tournaments, and Alvin Kamara last week. Granted, it's still Alvin Kamara. Still rushed 13 times for almost 100 yards, 13 for 97, was on the field for 50 of 66 snaps. He also had 8 targets in the passing game, caught 7 passes for 72 yards. And you're right. Like if those numbers for Fournette continue to go up in the passing game, like you have to feel terrific about him, especially in tournaments when people feel like Fournette let him down, but it was really just the Chiefs just getting off to such a big lead, and then Minshew entering the game that it just, even though Fournette was fine, it wasn't the day that everybody anticipated from him. So I think this is a good opportunity for him to bounce back. Another game that has some potential sneaky shootout potential is San Francisco going to Cincinnati. Currently, the line is -1 for the Bengals. It opened with the 49ers as 1.5 point favorites, but it has since been bet up to the other side of the coin, where Cincinnati is now 1 point favorites at home. And the total has gone up from 45 to 46. Let's start on the Cincinnati side. Are you buying what you saw from Andy Dalton in a very pass-heavy offense against Seattle? What was interesting about that game, and again, I don't remember who listed this, so I apologize. It might have been Pro Football Focus and Scott Barrett. This game was never more than 4 points ahead for either side. And yet Cincinnati passed about 3.5 times more than they ran. Now, I understand that Joe Mixon left, but you can still hand the ball off to Gio Bernard and feel like he's going to be effective for you. But they were so pass dominant in Zach Taylor's first game as the coach of the Cincinnati Bengals that it's hard not to get excited about the prospects of Tyler Boyd this week. Maybe Tyler Eifert gets himself involved in the end zone. John Ross was dynamic in week number 1. So from a fantasy fan perspective, it's easy to feel good about what Cincinnati is doing, especially if that's going to be the type of pass volume that we see. And you can still pass on the 49ers even with the better pass rush this year.
Yeah, look, I I look at the Bengals, I think they're going to throw a lot. I mean, Taylor showed his hand with that. That they, even like you're talking about a close game, that the Bengals went so, because if you don't look at the score, if you don't look at the score at all, you'd swear the Bengals got blown out of this one. That they just like turned to throwing the ball because they couldn't run and they were catching up, and the 49ers just beat the crud out of them like it was like a 40-7 shellacking. But that's not the case. So I think that there is going to be pass volume to be had for Cincinnati. Now, am I really going to target a lot of different pieces in this game? I don't know, man. I think this game is probably going to hit the under.
Okay.
I think the 49ers defense is better than people give them credit for. I think the Bengals are going to try to pass, but their inability to run the ball at all makes me kind of more worried about Gio, even though I think he's going to get the volume. But I just don't see the stat line being there for Gio. If you want the pieces of the Bengals passing offense, I'm not going to tell you no. I understand it. But the only guy that I'm looking, because John Ross is the sexy item right now. He's the shiny hood ornament. I don't want any part of John Ross. The only guy that I would be looking at for the Bengals would be Tyler Boyd, because he gets Quan Williams in the slot, who is just a free pass for wide receivers. So Tyler Boyd, look, he didn't lead the team in targets. He had 11. They used him as Andy Dalton's security blanket. He was used a little bit different than he was last year. He got about 45% in the slot versus 73% last year. So I think he moves around. I think he's going to have a good game. He's a lock for 10 to 12 targets. As far as the 49ers, man, Jimmy G is playing so bad right now, and I'm a huge Jimmy G lover. We've gotten on here. We've talked, you and me have talked tons about this 49ers offense. Mm-hmm. But right now, I just don't see this as the week that you really want a lot of exposure to the 49ers. I think that George Kittle is going to get volume, but outside of that, I think this game is going to be very nasty.
And remember, too, Kittle caught, I believe, 2 touchdowns that got called back last week. Winston had thrown those 2 touchdowns, too, to Cameron Brate that got called back as well. That could have made a major difference for fantasy owners in that game. But Kittle is always in play. A guy that we were hoping for, at least on the early side, was Dante Pettis, and he only got 1 target in that game. For whatever reason, the 49ers coaching staff does not seem to be impressed with what they've seen out of Pettis so far, and hopefully that's a nice road back, and maybe it's a guy that you can scoop up on your waiver wire if you have some bench space, because eventually he's going to be the guy there. He's too talented not to be, but Kittle probably the play, and Matt Breida getting the start at running back with no Tevin Coleman. I think from a season-long perspective, I would feel comfortable rolling him out on the daily side, especially on fantasy sports markets. I'm staying far, far away. And to your point about Breida, I think that Breida would carry the only ownership for the running backs. Raheem Mostert makes for a nice tournament play. Nobody's going to play him, but they're still going to split the snaps. We're still looking at a 60-40 backfield. It's just a difference in names here. So Raheem Mostert, if you want a 49ers back, it's not Breida for me. It's Mostert. Fair enough. The Buffalo Bills have a fun situation. Not only did they get to go to the Meadowlands in Week 1 and stun the Jets in a nice upset win over there. I think the Jets were 3.5 point favorites, but they get to go back to the Meadowlands, play in the same stadium, and play against arguably a worse team in the New York Giants. Currently, Buffalo is 1.5 point favorites. That line moved down from -2.5 down to 1.5 on the road. The total has gone up a point in this game from 42.5 to 43.5. Evan Ingram was terrific in Week 1 for the Giants. That was probably the only feel-good play other than Saquon Barkley. It's a very tough defense they're going up again this week at home against Buffalo. And on the Buffalo side, Josh Allen could be one of the chalkier quarterbacks of the week. Maybe not so on fantasy sports markets, but certainly a terrific matchup with his ability to run and his constant high floor. Are you buying in on Josh Allen for this week?
I like Josh Allen in the sense that we're going to see him run. That's going to happen. And if you just watch, like we're talking about the Cowboys, they ripped the Giants secondary in half. I think John Brown and Allen is a great pairing this week. They're absolutely in play. John Brown, as much as people want to trash on the Bills, as much as we want to sit here and make fun of them and whatever else, we want to dive through tables and all that kind of stuff, their coaching
It's not
staff,
the players that are doing that.
No, absolutely. But there are certain teams that just have this stink around them that people are like, yeah, do I buy in? Do I play? Do I not? Do I dive through a table? John Brown is firmly in play. This coaching staff for the Bills did some great things last week, and one of those things was John Brown's. And I know it's one game, but it's very telling. John Brown saw 45% of his snaps from the slot, and what that tells me is the matchup last week is in the slot. This week, again, it's in the slot. Haley in the slot is just #bad. I think that they move him around. I think that Josh Allen to Brown and another smash week is firmly in play in this one. And I was just looking at news, so breaking, Sterling Shepard's ruled out of this game. So you got to love Evan Ingram in this contest. He's going to eat. We saw what he had, 14 targets. His floor should be 12 targets in this game. So from a volume standpoint, he is firmly in play this week.
Evan Ingram last week on the road at Dallas was targeted 14 times, played 53 out of 69 snaps, caught 11 passes for 116 yards and a touchdown. And then on the other side for Josh Allen, the thing that I felt the best about, because remember, he was the quarterback one on the final stretch of the season. And a lot of people thought, well, maybe he's not going to run as much as he did a season ago. Nope, Josh Allen still had 10 carries for 38 yards and a touchdown. And if you look at his last, let's go back to late November. These are the rushing attempts for Josh Allen: 13 for 99, 9 for 135, 9 for 101, and then he slowed down a little bit against Detroit, but still attempted 9 rushes for 16 yards. And then 5 against New England, 5 against Miami to close out the season, had 2 rushing touchdowns, and then, of course, the 1 touchdown last week. He has 5 touchdowns on the ground in his last 5 games. So the floor is always going to be there for Josh Allen. One other note to consider, from an efficiency standpoint, granted Frank Gore still got a bunch of run, but what do you think of Devin Singletary as a possible tournament play this week?
I'm not that much on Singletary. Looking at ownership percentages right now, dude, Singletary and Barkley, and I know this is early right now, are carrying the same ownership percentages, and that is just bonkers to me. Absolutely wild. I think people are going to be scared to play Barkley in this one, and it does not matter. It does not matter about Eli Manning under center. It doesn't matter about Shepard. Barkley is going to get his. He's going to get touches. All he has to do is break one long one, and he pays off for you in this one. So I don't really want any exposure to Singletary, because you don't know if Frank Gore, the old man, is going to get 2 goal line touches.
Right.
It doesn't matter if Singletary outsnaps him, because we don't know who. Well, no, I'll take that back. We do know who the red zone running back is, and it's Josh Allen. So right. I don't want Singletary. I love Barkley in this one. I love Evan Ingram. Another play that I want to talk about really quickly before we move on is Cole Beasley. Okay. I think in the slot, he's going to get targeted. Josh Allen in this offense, they've shown these coaches want to give Josh Allen outlet throws. I think he's the sneaky play in here, that if you want to differentiate, you want to get wild in large field GPPs, I like Cole Beasley this week.
And Beasley has shown through those games in Dallas, he would have a couple 2-touchdown games with just a couple drop-offs out of the slot, and he was shifty enough to find himself into the end zone. So I don't mind that call at all. I saw from Adam Levitan that Devin Singletary, with 11 receptions on just 78 snaps so far, preseason plus regular season. Tiny sample, obviously, but even a higher rate than Austin Eckler's. Again, very small sample size, and maybe not the play for this week. However, for many of you that are watching this video that are in season-long leagues, Devin Singletary is a great buy low candidate now, especially if this week he doesn't get the carries and volumes that a lot of us expect him to get, and Frank Gore ends up plunging into the end zone. This is a great opportunity to buy low on Devin Singletary, because he's going to get some run in that offense. To Green Bay, Wisconsin, where the Minnesota Vikings and Kirk Cousins and his 8 of 10 for 95 yards and a touchdown will go to the non-frozen tundra of Lambeau Field, where the Packers are 2.5-point favorites, and the total in this game is dropping as if it's a December game in Green Bay. It has gone down from 46 to 43. The Packers are coming off of a long week. They got that big road win in Chicago, but their offense did not look good at all. Their defense looked terrific against Mitch Trubisky. We're not sure whether that was an impact of Trubisky and Matt Nagy's play calling, or whether Green Bay is actually significantly better with, I think, 7 or 8 new starters on the defensive side of the ball. That remains to be seen. They are going to have to try and find a way to slow down Dalvin Cook, Derek, who has become the focal point and the main point of the Minnesota Vikings offense. Do you think they can do it?
No. I don't think they can do it at all. I think that this run offense for the Vikings is here to stay. as much as an RIP to all of my Thielen and Diggs shares in season long. I think that they're going to turn into high variance wide receiver twos. I mean, you're looking at a similar, just a split wide receiver core. I mean, it's almost like a Saints idea here that unless Vikings are pushed, if they can control the tempo of the game, they're going to run some more. And Dalvin Cook is going to be featured. I mean, last week, you talk about Cousins only attempting 10 passes. Dalvin Cook was targeted on 2 of those. So 20% target share for all the mathites out there. But look, I think Dalvin Cook is the smash play in this one. I love him in this game. Besides all the other 2 sides of this, I mean, sure, you could talk yourself into Devontae Adams. He's going to get volume. Although matched up with Xavier Rhodes, he's had high floor games. He's never had a ceiling game versus them. I really don't want any part. And I feel like trying to stack either side of this game is just getting too cute with it. Honestly, I think Dalvin Cook is a great play for this week as a one-off. If you want to get really wild and just set your hair on fire, I think Jimmy Graham is another very interesting play. I wrote him up in 10 stats. Week 2 of last year, the dude had 95 yards versus this team. They are not good versus tight ends. They funnel all their targets to the middle of the field. Jimmy Graham led the Packers in air yards last week, and I think this could be another spot. If you're looking for old man, look, I'm just preaching. It's all old men tight end this week. It's all the old guys that nobody wants to play. It's not the new hotness. It's not the air yards. It's not the Hawk. It's not the Andrews. It's the old man.
Fair enough. I will say this from this perspective, and then this is sort of game theory spinning around in my head. We talked about it last week. You kind of spin a story to try and figure out where you want to go.
Yep.
Let's say Green Bay decides they want to go the Mitchell Trubisky effect and say, we want Kirk Cousins to play quarterback. You know, that's like they said, we want Mitchell Trubisky to have to play quarterback for us to win. And they just stack the box, 8-9 against Dalvin Cook. He could still get targets in the passing game, but if there's an opportunity for Cousins to have to throw, I don't know if I have the stones to do it to make a GPP lineup with Cousins and Thielen, but that's the only way that I see something happening here, where they just say, we're not going to let Dalvin Cook beat us. We're going to have to make Kirk Cousins do it on his own. If he beats us with his throwing arm and with Thielen and Diggs, fine. We can live with that because we know what their offense is set to do. But I think at that point, you're working too hard to build that narrative, and so that's probably a game that I'm staying away. Season long is tough because I still think you play Thielen. Diggs I'm a little bit concerned about. Certainly Cook is in play. What about Aaron Jones? Aaron Jones disappointed a lot of people. We saw Jamal Williams get a lot of touches last week. Are you starting to get concerned about Aaron Jones, or do you just think it's a tough stretch to start the season?
I think it's a tough stretch, but I mean, you have to be concerned about Aaron Jones. What we wanted, what we hoped, what everybody prays for, and I just don't know if we're ever going to actually see it, is Aaron Jones to be a workhorse and him to consistently get that volume. And I just, at this point, I got to see it to believe it. Like, I'm not willing to roll out Aaron Jones. Even I just feel like it's being too cute. There's so many other spots on the slate to attack, and I'm not willing to bet on Aaron Jones getting that volume, not from what we've seen over his entire career, not from what we've seen in 1 week. I'm not willing to do it.
All right, Seattle is on the road. They are heading to Pittsburgh, where the Steelers are currently 4-point favorites. That game line has only moved a tad from -3.5 to -4, and the total has stayed right where it's been all week long at 46.5. The Steelers were flat out embarrassed on Sunday night. Big Ben looked terrible. Juju Smith-Schuster was very mediocre. James Conner got shut down in both the running game and the passing game. Dante Moncrief made a flat out embarrassment of himself. He could not catch the ball. It was sort of like that play where Jameis was trying to hit Brashad Perryman last night, and Brashad Perryman was like, "Oh wait, I have hands. I'm not a Muppet." And he just the ball just went right by his eyes, just zoop, zoop. Anyway, that was Dante Moncrief last week. For Seattle, though, they needed to pass a bunch to be able to win against Cincinnati at home, and Chris Carson had himself a monster game. Tyler Lockett only got targeted twice, but still was able to get one catch for a touchdown. I'm sorry, he got targeted more than twice. He only got 2 balls. One of them was for a touchdown. And DK Metcalf got a lot more targets than I think a lot of people anticipated. You and I are both on team Steelers bounce back. So which Steelers are in play for you? And on the other side, is there anybody from Seattle that intrigues you going to Pittsburgh from West Coast to East Coast in a tough matchup?
I think, Steel City. Steelers week is firm in play. Big Ben is going to have a huge bounce back game in this one. I like James Conner in this game. It just depends on what you kind of tell yourself in this game. Is the Seattle run defense for real? Is it not? With Jadeveon Clowney, I think James Conner is going to get volume in this game. I believe that's going to happen. I just don't know how successful he's going to be at running the ball because, let's just throw it out there, Ben. The Steelers' offensive line looked terrible last week.
They did.
And I get the Patriots do have a good defensive line, but I think I lean more towards Big Ben and the pass catchers in this one. And Juju is a must play. I feel like he's going to be in a great spot. People are going to sit here and build the narrative of, you can't play with that Antonio Brown and that. Dude, anybody matching up with Stephon Gilmore for half a game, a whole game, is going to have some issues. Exactly. So get off the road with Juju is not a good wide receiver. I don't even want to hear that mess. James Washington is the play that I want in this one. Dude is second in the NFL after week 1 in air yards. His ADOT was 28. He only played around 50-something% of the snaps. I get that. I don't care about that because the fact of it is Big Ben is going to toss the ball in this game, which I firmly believe he's going to do. The concentration for targets is going to be more than people believe. James Washington, all he has to do is pull a John Ross and run down the field, and he's going to catch a long touchdown in this one.
Okay, I think James Washington's a really intriguing play. I also, for everybody that cut bait with Moncrief, I think you probably want to wait a week because I think he'll probably see some more targets in this game as well. He may not do anything spectacular, but again, the number 2 wide receiver in Pittsburgh is going to get volume. Just it's a very throw-heavy offense, so I wouldn't give up on Moncrief just yet, even though he looked atrocious. Let's move on. Colts are going to Tennessee. Right now the line is -3 for the Titans at home. So pretty much a pick'em game. They're getting the 3 points because of the fact that they're at home. Total has gone up from 44 to 44.5. The Derrick Henry truthers last week. Derrick, they won. They got what they were looking for. And coincidentally enough, everyone's saying, well, he does catch passes. Yes, his touchdown catch was a long one, and it was on a screen pass. And they're still going to do that from time to time. The matchup against the Colts is pretty interesting. We saw what Austin Eckler did to them last week, and the Colts are on the road for the second consecutive week. Yes, it's very feasible that Tennessee gets off to a 2-0 start, but who do you like from either side of the ball here, and are you going back to Derrick Henry if you were on him last week?
So on the Colts side of it, I think that you can craft yourself a narrative for T.Y. Hilton. I don't think that I'm going to go there. I think his history versus Adoree Jackson is very spotted. He's had one big game and 3 quiet ones versus him. So I'm probably staying away from Hilton. I do love Marlon Mack. We talked about him last week. I'm going back there again this week. I think he is a sneaky, sneaky bell cow. I don't care about Nyheim Hines. Mack ran more routes last week. He played over 75% of the snaps. He's going to get work in this one. Nick Chubb did not have a huge game, but Nick Chubb didn't get 20-something carries. He got vultured at the goal line by Hilliard, so it's a little bit deceiving. I think Mack is in for another good game in this one. As far as the Titans side of it, I've spread all of the Delanie Walker love that I possibly can, but if you're not listening, you need to, because Delanie Walker is going to have a great game in this one. Even last year, Jonnu Smith got a lot of run last year when Delanie Walker was out versus this game. If he would not have left that game with an injury, he would have smashed the slate versus the Colts. I think they go straight back to that, but with Walker in this one, I don't really care about the wide receivers. The corners for the Colts are good. Derrick Henry is going to eat in this game. I think that, look, it's firmly in play. People want to talk, I like Henry because he's going to get 20-plus touches. And if he gets a handful of targets, that home run ability is real. We've seen it too many times to dismiss it at this point. He could catch any one of these screen passes and house one in this one.
Also, think about all the missed tackles the Colts had last week against Austin Eckler. Now, Eckler's shifty, he's quick, he's electric in space. Henry is more powerful and more physical, but if you miss tackles, man, you're not going to be able to wrap up Derrick Henry. So I'm with you there. I think part of the reason that the total is so low, even though I think there will be some points scored, It's bell cow running backs that are taking time off the clock. It's less about the offenses, I think, struggling and more about time of possession in this game. So I'm with you. I think both running backs are firmly in play. You just hope for the Colts' sake. We know the numbers of Marlon Mack when the team is up, but they were training a little bit last week too, and Mack still got a bunch of run, and they know that the offense is going to go through him. And boy, we were talking on the Quant Edge video series about how everybody was overreacting to Andrew Luck's retirement from the perspective of how it impacts Marlon Mack and how it impacts T.Y. Hilton come fantasy drafts. They dropped from the early third round to the early part of the fifth round, and you and I were sitting there trying to get as much exposure to those guys in the late third and early fourth as we could because we knew what the type of impact they would have in a Frank Reich offense.
Oh, absolutely. Still top 5 offensive line. And I'm going to steal a little stat from Graham Barfield, who is doing amazing work over at NFL.com.
We love
the last 5 games, Marlon Mack has run more routes than Nyheim Hines. It's just not showing up in the box score. He's getting bell cow work. People need to play him. And once they start wanting to play him, they're like, damn, why did I not play Marlon Mack in DFS in the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season? Like, what was I thinking? That's what's going to happen.
Fair enough. Arizona, they are coming off a home tie against Detroit, have to travel to Baltimore to take on the Ravens, who are coming off a massive road win on the road at Miami. The line has since moved from Baltimore minus two touchdowns, minus 14, to minus 13. So a little bit of sharp money coming in on Arizona at that number. And the total has moved up quite a bit from 42.5 to 46. And I think that's just an indication of so many plays the Cardinals offense runs. I don't know why I said that like Yoda. So many plays the Cardinals offense runs. And on the other side, Baltimore's offense looked lethal last week against Miami, but I wonder how many other offenses are going to look terrific whenever they get a chance to play the Dolphins. Baltimore, I think Lamar Jackson is going to be the darling of the Week 2 fantasy community. He'll probably be the number 1 lock in cash, I would imagine, at the quarterback spot. It's another great matchup. I know that Arizona looked better than maybe we anticipated against Detroit, and some of their terrific pass catchers, but I'm not buying Arizona's secondary being vastly improved. Are you?
No, they're terrible. Look, Matt Stafford threw the most deep passes last week out of any quarterback in the NFL, and I think Lamar Jackson is just going to be tossing rocks in this one. They're just shoo, shoo, shoo. And look, if you want to pair him with Mark Andrews, I'm not going to tell you not to. If you want to pair him with Marquise Brown, I feel like you're point chasing a little bit because he's not going to get the snaps. Could he break one and maybe look like a total donkey? Sure, probably. But I think that there's a really good spot to convince yourself and to just running Lamar Jackson naked in this one and just say, look, all the touchdowns are going to go through him. Maybe you pair him with Mark Ingram, who I think, like, if people want to talk about snaps and stuff, snaps are a little bit wonky.
You did talk about that last week, though. You and I both thought Mark Ingram had a chance to get multiple touchdowns, and sure enough, he did. And I know there's still people that are on the Justice Hill train, and if you have room on your fantasy bench in season long, well, no, I'm still of the belief that he's the best running back on that team. Like, I firmly believe Justice Hill, from an athletic and a talent perspective, is the best running back. It's all about whether or not that opportunity is going to come. What scares me, though, is that Gus Edwards also got the same number of carries that Justin Hill did. So even if Ingram were to go down, even if he gets hit by a bus, and I certainly hope he does not, Gus Edwards could still split carries.
Did you just make a Mark Ingram getting taken out by the Gus bus reference? Wow!
That was actually pretty good. I kind of wish. Nice. I kind of wish that I played that off in my head a little bit more. But yes, if Mark Ingram goes down for any reason, it could still be a committee, a full-on committee in Baltimore, and that's still what scares me about Justice Hill.
No, absolutely, and some of these things come down. It's not what we think; it's what the coaches think.
Right.
And the fact that they fed more Gus, I want to work in something about a bus right now, but you did it so perfectly. I can't right now. Look, I like Mark Ingram in this spot. I think that the Ravens are going to run a lot of plays, and they're going to run the ball. That is firmly in place. Anybody that, I feel like Mark Ingram is basically Baltimore's version of Derrick Henry right now. I feel like he's not going to get a lot of targets. I feel like he's firmly in play for volume. So I like him in this game a whole lot. As far as the Cardinals, man, even with Kyler Murray, like, I understand people want to play him. They want to be like, oh, it's contrarian. Nobody's going to play him. I'll play him. He's going to run. I think Kyler Murray's in for a long day in this one. I feel like this game could get out of hand very, very quickly, and Kyler Murray is going to be under some pressure. The corners for the Ravens are no joke. They are stacked. Whether you're talking about Brandon Carr in the slot, you're talking about Humphrey, you're talking about Jimmy Smith on the outside, they're legit, absolutely legit. And so I worry about the Cardinals. The only kind of contrarian play I would even possibly think of rolling out for the Cardinals side would be David Johnson. Only because he's going to get work in the pass game. If he breaks a long run, nobody's going to own him this week. And I'm not saying I'm going to have a lot of exposure, but am I going to toss him into some multi-entry, some large field stuff because nobody else wants to play him? Sure, I might go there.
Yeah, and David Johnson would probably get maybe less than 5% ownership on the big contest this week over at fantasysportsmarkets.com. So that's certainly intriguing. With Kyler Murray too, like, yes, there's the rushing upside. He can run, he can scramble, he can get some yards, and it's a game script that looks to be very pass heavy to try and get some points back on the board. But Baltimore's defense is really, really good, and they're going to be limiting. And you're right. I just think it's probably an indication that he's going to have a rough game as a pro. And the first 3 quarters against Detroit did not look good for Kyler Murray as well. Maybe he impresses. Maybe he does some things. 5 seconds on this one before we move to the other game. Hollywood Brown, flash in the pan, or do you think this is somebody that has standalone value as a season-long pickup? Because the fact that he did it while only playing 14 snaps is pretty remarkable. And that's why I preferred a couple other guys this week as waiver wire pickups ahead of him. Just in a run-heavy offense with that type of production against the worst team in the league, I think people need to temper their expectations a little bit.
No, I'm with you, Ben. I think that he was not going to be high in waiver priority for me in season longs. I feel like it's not so much box score chasing, but I feel like he's not getting the snaps right now to justify the ceiling weeks. I think the ceiling weeks are definitely going to be there. Now the question is, when? How? Like, when do you feel comfortable putting him into your lineups? And until we see his snap percentage rise, I'm not going to play him until that happens, because I can't tell you anything outside of when the ceilings are going to come. They're going to happen, but I feel like it's going to be very, very hit or miss, and I feel like that's going to play out over the next few weeks.
This is a game with a lot of fantasy fun. The Chiefs are on the road against the Raiders. The line is currently Chiefs minus 7.5 on the road in their final trip to Oakland Alameda County Stadium, or whatever the hell they call it now. It doesn't matter. It's the final year, and they're going to move to Vegas. So that's exciting for the Oakland Raiders. It's exciting for Chiefs fans that finally are going to get a chance to go and see the Raiders in Vegas against the Chiefs. Anyway, that's beside the point. Total has gone up from 52 to 52.5, one of the higher totals on the slate. No Tyreek Hill. He's going to be out the next 4 to 6 weeks with that injury. And it's a weird situation for Kansas City in the sense that Sammy Watkins was one of the best wide receivers on the slate last week, getting so many open looks, a lot of yards after the catch. They still incorporated Damian Williams. He outsnapped LaShawn McCoy nearly 2.5 to 1. And then, Travis Kelce is always going to be Travis Kelce. On the Raiders side, it's remarkable to think that there are multiple Raiders in this matchup that are probably going to be very friendly and very chalky options. Derek Carr, terrific matchup against Kansas City, has played well against them in the past, especially at home. Josh Jacobs got a ton of volume in the Monday night game. Tyrell Williams was terrific, looked more like a number 1 wide receiver than just the deep guy the last several years with the Chargers. And then Darren Waller had his breakout party as well. Tell me your thoughts on both of the sides here, and then I'll get into I'm planting my Damian Williams flags, and I might be the only person in the world that's doing that. But who are the guys that you like in this matchup?
For the Raiders side, I firmly believe that the Raiders are going to end up being chalk, at least from the positional standpoint. I think Carr is in play in this one. Like I talked about how Kansas City allowed Gardner Minshew to look like a competent quarterback. Derek Carr can absolutely feast in this one. So I think that from that perspective, and as far as value-wise, I think Carr is a great play this week. Tyrell Williams is going to eat. So if you head over to the Quant Edge, you look at my 10 stats article, Tyrell Williams, the splits versus man and zone are just ginormous. He has eviscerated zone all over his last 3 years. So And looking at Steve Spagnuolo's defense, that's primarily what they run. He is going to have a great game. It just depends. I think that Raiders, for me, are more in playing cash, and you're playing GPPs. I think you sprinkle them in, and that I'll have exposure to them when it makes sense. Will I be running out a full Raiders stack in GPPs? No, because I think that a lot more people are going to be on them, especially come Sunday, and more of the talk is going to get out there. As far as the Kansas City side, Kelsey's in play. He is going to eat in this game. I mean, we know Mahomes, if he wouldn't have decided to look in a totally different direction last week, dude, Travis Kelce should have had 1-2 touchdowns. Like, that is absolutely should have happened. And we'd be looking at Travis Kelce a little, well, not so much different, but a little bit. And so Mahomes is in play in this one, especially on fantasy sports markets. I mean,
he'll be the chalk quarterback. Him and Lamar Jackson.
He will be,
especially in the super flex. Those would be the two guys that everyone's going to be on.
No, and I can't tell people not to play them, considering like that he's going to have another smash game in this one. So I like Kelce. Mecole Hardman is the Tyreek Hill light. He's going to get run in this one. Some of the Raiders corners are banged up in this one. You only need 1 or 2 screen passes to Hardman for him to house him in this one.
And they're also coming off a short week too.
Yep. So I mean, I like those plays. Sammy Watkins is going to get volume. He's coming off a monster game. I think he's going to be chalk in this one. You've got a lot of Damian Williams love, and I'm going to take the other side of the coin.
Okay.
And I don't know if that's the popular opinion, but I like LaShawn McCoy more than I like Damian Williams. I feel like the longer that he's in this backfield, I feel like he showed that he still has some juice in his legs last week. He had the better yards per carry. If he gets the early down and the goal line work in this one, and I know you got some great stats for it, Ben, so I don't want to stomp too much on your heart with this one, but I like LaShawn McCoy in this one. I don't know if anybody's going to even rush to play either one of these running backs.
Right.
But if it's one of them in GPPs, I feel like it's McCoy for me.
So, to your point really quickly on McCoy, I think as the season goes on, you're going to start to see more of him and more opportunities in the goal line. I think that will eventually come. What was interesting is that they had a great opportunity for him to be the goal line back in a blowout win to try and get him some more volume and more opportunities, and they didn't do it. Damian Williams outsnapped him 2.5 to 1. I talked about this throughout the week. Using the Quant Edge injury tool, I saw that only 2 players last year when Tyreek Hill was off the field, and that was 17% of the time, saw their targets go up. One of them was Demarcus Robinson, so it's not really a factor this year. Maybe you can look at that as that Mecole Hardman, Tyreek Hill fill-in at this point. But the other was Damian Williams. Damian Williams saw his target share go up almost 4% in this offense. He was the goal line back last week. And now to add some more stats to it as well, Jared Smola at Smola DS on Twitter. He was number 5 in tackles avoided according to Pro Football Focus. All the guys in the statistical category balled out. Alvin Kamara, Le'Veon Bell, Josh Jacobs, Austin Eckler, Damian Williams. So Williams was involved in the running game as well. He was involved and active in the running game. He also had a nullified touchdown that was taken off the board, along with guys like George Kittle and Cam Brate and Raheem Mostert last week. Everything about Damian Williams in this particular matchup tells me, and this is the most important part, nobody got more red zone looks than Damian Williams last week. Not amongst running backs, not amongst wide receivers. He was the guy that was being targeted and looked at and had opportunity in the red zone. So is LaShawn McCoy eventually going to maybe take over some of that role? Yes. But right now, there's a clear indication from this Kansas City staff that they want Damian Williams near the red zone, near the goal line, and involved in the passing game as well. It's just everything about this matchup, from going up against Oakland to having Mahomes as his quarterback to trust in him in the passing game, just feels like it makes so much sense to roll the dice on Damian Williams at super low ownership this week. So that's why I'm buying in. And maybe it doesn't last for the rest of the season. Maybe it doesn't last for more than a few more games. But in this matchup against Oakland, based on everything that we saw from last week and entering this season, that's part of the reason I love Damian Williams.
All right. I mean, I can't fight any of those points. It's all really valid points. And like I said, nobody's going to run to play Kansas City running backs. So I think that he's going to be sub 5, sub 6%.
I agree.
Owned. And Ben, if he stacks 2 touchdowns in this game, you're going to be doing the happy dance. Like, you're going to be just money's going to be raining. You're just going to be running naked through the streets with nothing but money underwear.
That sounds fun.
It does.
Money
Except
underwear.
for the paper cuts. I mean, you got to worry about the paper cuts.
Fair enough. From a game that's got a lot of fantasy fun to a game with not so much fantasy fun, my beloved Chicago Bears are going to Denver to match up against their former defensive coordinator, Vic Fangio, in a game that has a total of 40.5. And another interesting fact, the Broncos opened up this game as -1 favorites at home, and the line has shifted so badly to watch Joe Flacco crap the bed against Oakland on the road that now in his home debut for the Denver Broncos, the line has moved 3.5 points in the other direction towards the Bears. So, again, it's Overreaction Monday. A lot of people thought the Bears' season was over after watching Mitch Trubisky play, and now they're 2.5-point favorites in one of the toughest stadiums to play in on the road at Denver. I have no idea what to make of this game. All I know is that I saw Allen Robinson last week ball out. I saw Cortland Sutton look terrific. And that's really all the interest that I have in this game. I'm hopeful for David Montgomery to get more touches and opportunity. I know how you feel about him. I feel the same way. I just don't know if the Bears are going to get there yet.
I can't talk myself into playing any part of this game. This game looks so nasty.
Other than the defense.
Yeah, the defenses are both in play. I agree with that. Firmly agree with that. But I can't get behind any of the offensive players in this one. I mean, you just don't know. For the running backs, you have no clue where the ball is going to go. Like, we have no idea where they're going to go with the ball in the sense that, like, you got Davis, you got Cohen, you've got Montgomery. I don't think that we have a clear line even where the ball goes in Denver. So I don't want any of the running backs in this one. The only play that I think you could talk yourself into in a low total game is possibly Allen Robinson. And it's only because, like you said, he balled out and nobody's going to want to play him. Bryce Callahan is now looking like he's dinged up.
Former Chicago Bear, by the way. A revenge game for him.
Yep. That's fair. So, I really don't want a lot of exposure to this game. The only play that I could possibly get behind is probably Robinson, though.
All right, got a couple more to get to before we wrap things up. This is another game. A lot of excitement on the afternoon slate. The Saints are heading to the Rams. It is a revenge game for your New Orleans Saints. The total has gone down from 54 to 52 on the road against the Rams. And the line, by the way, too, Rams opened at -3. It has since gone down to -2. Saints are coming off the short week. They got that big win thanks to the big leg of Will Lutz down the stretch in the Superdome. That was very exciting. One of the best games of the year, and it'll probably be one of the better games of the year. Certainly Monday Night Football to kick off that way was very, very positive. But Jared Goff gets to come home. He has big home run splits. Brandon Cooks has been terrific the last few games in his revenge game against the Saints, over 100 yards, and I believe a touchdown scored in both of those games as well. I think a big question, especially on the daily side, Derek, that I've seen is a lot of people are trying to figure out which, if I go with Goff in cash, which is a perfectly feasible option, which wide receiver do I stack him with? Do I go with Robert Woods, who got the bulk of the targets last week? Do I go with Cooper Kupp, who is a reliable, friendly option in the slot? Or do I go with somebody like Brandon Cooks, who has a chance to break the slate? Of those three wide receivers, which ones do you like the most to pair up with Jared Goff this week?
So in cash, I think your decision has to be between Woods and Kupp. I think Woods is going to carry the higher ownership, but I think Kupp is the one that has the highest floor in this game. So personally, from a floor standpoint, it's if you're pairing with Goff and cash, it's got to be Kupp for me. If you lean more towards the ownership standpoint, you're like, look, if Woods carries more ownership, he busts, so what? It's all good in cash. Then fine. I'm not going to tell you, but it's Woods or Kupp in cash. For GPPs, man, I love some Brandon Cooks this week. You talked about him in both the games last year versus the Saints, above 100 yards. He is going to have a long touchdown in this one. Absolutely can get behind the defense. And for my 10 stats article over at the Quant Edge, I know I've brought it up a few different times, but going back there again, his splits home road have been huge. And whether that's tied to Jared Goff or not, it's still a thing. Last year, he was almost at 100 yards per game at home versus 60 on the road. It is what it is, man. I think there's substance to that, and Brandon Cooks is a great play in this game.
One other quick note on the Rams side before we talk about the Saints. A lot of people jumped on Malcolm Brown. He got the 2 goal line touchdowns. He was one of the more popular waiver wire pickups this week. Gurley wasn't terrible, but he wasn't getting the goal line volume that we're normally used to seeing from him. Could he be a sneaky GPP play if the Rams still feel like he's actually healthy and could benefit here? They talked about how Malcolm Brown was just sort of in the right place at the right time for his opportunity. I don't know whether I believe it or not, but Gurley with maybe low ownership could be very intriguing this week.
He could be, and I understand if people want to go there as far as ownership standpoint. For me, I feel like with running backs, I want to know where the ball is going. I want to know who is getting the red zone touches. Because if you bought into Todd Gurley this year, you bought into 2 things. It wasn't volume. You bought into him getting, one, being efficient with his touches, which, okay, he was.
He was.
That's great. That's grand. He ran routes. He didn't get targeted. So whether that comes back to the mean or not, but if you bought into Todd Gurley, you bought into efficiency, which we saw, but you also bought into those money touches near the goal line, and we didn't see that. So why would Sean McVay? He could say whatever he wants to about Malcolm Brown being on the field and drives and blah, 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 blah. Why would you not put your best player, Todd Gurley, in at the goal line? I don't care if Malcolm Brown got the entire drive. At that spot, if you bought into Gurley, you bought into the Rams putting Gurley in these money spots, right, and him hogging the touchdowns. We've seen that doesn't happen. It didn't happen. So I'm not willing, like I was talking about a second ago, I want to play running backs who I know are going to get the ball at the goal line, like Dalvin Cook. He's going to get the ball. If they get inside the 5, that's his time. I can't say that that's time for Gurley. We've seen it. I can't definitively say that. So even in GPPs, I feel like it's getting too cute. I don't want any part of Gurley because I can't tell you if they get in close 6 times in the game that Malcolm Brown doesn't get 5 of those touches. There's no way to say that with any kind of definition.
Yeah, that's really good stuff. From the Saints side, Kamara, lock button across pretty much all lineups this week?
100%. Give me all the Alvin Kamara. Just like CMC last week, he was in the nut spot. Alvin Kamara is going to smash this week. And if you don't have him, you might be burning all your money.
Eagles and the Falcons. We'll go through the Sunday night and the Monday night game awfully quickly. Right now, the Eagles are 2-point favorites on the road against Atlanta. The total has gone up from 51 to 52.5. Bounce back spot for Atlanta. Matt Ryan finally back at home. Conversely, on the Eagles side, they're looking to score, and we'll try and figure out whether or not it's Miles Sanders or Darren Sproles as the running back that you want to have a little bit of interest in, just because of how terrible the Falcons are at allowing pass-catching running backs to just run all over them. But any particular plays in this game that you'd recommend?
I love Matt Ryan in this one. I think that you roll Matt Ryan and you pair him with Julio and Ridley in this one. I feel like they're going to take to the air. They're going to do it early and often. I mean, we just saw, yes, the Vikings were able to run all over this Falcons team, but I want the pass catchers for the Falcons. I think that Julio has a great history versus the Eagles. For the Eagles side of it, Carson Wentz is firmly in play. I think that he can rip this defense in half. I get if people want to go to the running backs. I feel like it's just being too cute. I don't want any part of the running backs for the Eagles because, like I was talking about, you just don't know where the ball is going. You don't even know who's going to get the pass game work. I mean, it's a 3-4-headed monster there. And so if you're looking at the Eagles side of the ball, I think that Carson Wentz is in play. Deshaun Jackson is always a threat to break a long touchdown. And if you're pairing, if we see Carson Wentz access 3 to 4 touchdowns, Jeffrey's going to come down with 1. It's going to happen. So he's not a sexy play, but if you're stacking with Wentz, you got to have Jeffrey in there.
I'm a little bit higher on Miles Sanders than you are, just because of the fact that he did outsnap those other guys by almost a 2-to-1 level. Yes, it's a 3-headed committee, but I think Philly is sharp enough to know just how bad the Falcons are against stopping pass-catching running backs, and Sanders is able to do so. So I have him sprinkled in a couple of GPPs. Maybe it's getting a little bit too cute. But I also feel like that's a situation that I think they're going to be in on because it's just a really smart front office and coaching staff. Last one, Cleveland going up against the Jets in Monday Night Football. The line has since moved from the Browns -1 to -6.5 on the road. It is likely due to Sam Darnold's mononucleosis diagnosis. The line has also gone down from 46 to 44. There's also a little bit of concern that Greg Williams is going to try and hurt Baker Mayfield and Odell Beckham Jr. There's some reports that that Odell Beckham's been telling his teammates to watch out for all of Greg Williams' antics, so on and so forth. This feels like a nice bounce back opportunity for Baker and Odell and Rashard and Njoku and really everybody, Landry as well, Nick Chubb, just against a deflated Jets team even after week 1 of the NFL season. So I have no problem rolling out Cleveland Browns, even though the Jets defense looked very good last week up until Buffalo's comeback. But what do you make of this game, and anybody that you want to make sure you play or also make sure you fade?
I think that so Le'Veon Bell's MRI came back pretty clean. I think that he's the only option on the Jets side because we know he's going to see 20 to 25 touches.
Crowder might get like 20 targets for 20 yards for whatever.
Yeah, but
worth.
it's Trevor Siemian targets. So I mean, it's like 4 yards and
that's what I'm saying. 20 target, 20 catches for 20 yards.
Yeah, I mean, he's just basically the new Jarvis Landry. It's like 5-yard out routes. Boop, 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 boop. You know, so I get it. I think Le'Veon Bell is my only play on the Jets side for me, considering if they give him volume, he's more likely for the touchdown. It's really just stack the Cleveland side. I think you can make a narrative for all the different spots for Cleveland. I think this is going to be a team that is fired up to go against Greg Williams and absolutely rip his defense in half. I think that Baker is going to have a great game in this one. I think OBJ is going to smash. We're going to see a ceiling game out of both of them. I think that if you're going to pair Baker and OBJ, it's got to be Nick Chubb is going to get the volume, but the Browns doing wonky things at the goal line scares me. Like, why in the heck would you give the goal line tote to Hilliard? Makes no sense to me. If we're going to pair somebody with Baker, it's going to be Jarvis Landry in this one. Slot corner Brian Poole for the Jets is the whole reason that you targeted slot wide receivers against the Falcons last year. So I like Landry to have a good game in this one. But yeah, it's all Browns.
So there you go. That is the Week 2 edition of the Fantasy Sports Markets Podcast, Week 2 slate breakdown. Make sure you guys are reading Derek's work over at thequantedge.com. Follow him on Twitter at dbro_FFB. And, of course, you can follow me over at Benny Heiss. Get your lineups in. Go and take on Derek in the head-to-heads and also in these GPPs over at FSM. So thank you guys for listening. Thanks for being a part of it. Dbro, good luck in Week 2. I know you won't need it, but being the tournament player that you are, go ahead and just slay this week, brother. Good luck.
Thanks, Benny. Always a good time, man. We'll be back and be breaking down Week 3 before you know it.
Can't wait.